Howdy, everybody. It's the King of Funny here, and we are going into week 14 of the fantasy year, where, as we all know, playoffs are right around the corner, and me and Wiley cannot wait to discuss tomorrow's matchups and the possible 1 through 4 seeding that will be coming soon. Wiley, what are your first thoughts just coming out of the gate right here on the video? Are you anything special that you're looking forward to this week? Any matchups that you're keeping an eye on?
Oh, absolutely, King of Funny. The thing that really jumps out at me is this is something that I've mentioned pretty much every week because it is so abnormal. There are so many teams still live. Usually when you get this deep into the season, people have quit a long freaking time ago. They don't care anymore. They don't even check the roster, the waiver wire, much less watch a second of a Twit video. So the fact that we're this deep into the season and so many teams are live here is just fucking insane. It's just absolutely bonkers because even the games that don't really have playoff implications for one team, like Cameron's game for instance, have playoff implications for another. So we can jump into the last week review and get into things. So
Sounds good.
the most interesting game that happened last week was Gauch winning as predicted. And this one was actually a little bit closer than it looks because Darren Waller popped off for 32, just shitting in the mouth of the JETS jokes. This was another abominable performance by the Jets. Adam Gase is worse than Richie Kotite if you just look at the statistics. They've actually given up more yards in less games than the Kotite era, and they averaged less yards on offense. So I expect Gase to get shit canned at the end of the year, and this was one of those really hard to overcome performances. If you just fuck the line graph a little bit here, Seagull just took a huge advantage. And going into it was very weird because it looked like I was dead for a long time. And going into the Jokic Tuesday night game, I was down by I think like a dozen, and I had Zeke and he had Cooper, and of course Cooper queefs out a touchdown when he hasn't done shit all year, but it was just another immense disappointment. Basically, I can never get Hopkins and Allen to have a good week simultaneously. One will get between 10 and 15, the other will get 5. This has been something that has been occurring pretty consistently. I was right on Logan Thomas and really figuring out that Washington was going to be like the best team out of that division. And I know the Giants look hot recently, which is absolutely crazy, but I definitely believe in Alex Smith more than any other quarterback in that division. What do you think about the quarterbacks in the NFC East? Pretty underwhelming now.
Oh, I mean, whenever Carson Wentz is being benched for Jalen Hurts and the Cowboys situation, and you got Daniel Jones being the most productive out of all 4 of them, and Alex Smith has been somewhat productive too, but that says something whenever Daniel Jones and Alex Smith are your top 2 division quarterbacks, because they're not perennial all-stars, they're not perennial, anything other than just duds, and they're doing enough to put their teams in a position, but it's just a reflection of the sorry state of this division.
This is a division that a lot of people have sort of speculated might be the worst in football history. Would you go that far? Because it looks like whoever is going to win the division is going to do so with at least 8 losses.
I mean, to be honest, in recent memory, I don't know about in all time, but I know at least in my lifetime, it's got to be one of the worst. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen. I remember whenever the Patriots had Matt Castle and they didn't make the playoffs at 11-5. Whenever
the Jets
the
were
year
good.
Brady was hurt.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that was
Whenever
08.
Sexy Rexy. And that's an anomaly on its own. But to have a division this just piss poor, where it's kind of like our divisions where they're still up for grabs this late in the season. It's so bizarre to say the least.
Well, I think the way that the teams in the NFC East failed makes it a more interesting storyline because the Eagles were considered like an average squad. Sanders had a lot of hype. Wentz was a guy that literally got sucked off so deep that they got rid of a Super Bowl winning quarterback to stay with Wentz over Foles. And that really left Eagles fans with a sour taste in their mouth because they've seen Wentzy do a mixture of underperform, throw picks, and get hurt. Also, the Giants. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I say and fumble because he's a
Oh
fumble
yeah,
machine.
he is, and he throws picks too. Danny Dimes, aka 10 interceptions plus every season. What jumps out to me about the Skins is just their total clown of an owner who is just a duplicitous waste of life. They have a team with really no direction in a literal sense, like on the name, but also the fucking quarterback situation. The Haskins bit, to me, the drafting of is Dwayne Haskins, right? I'm not crazy.
Correct.
Okay, just
Correct.
just making sure. Sometimes I'll say a name and then it's like, oh shit, is that the wrong one? Spencer's gonna roast me, but yeah, it's almost like every time I doubt myself, I'm fucking right, and like a lot of times the mistakes I make, I just don't catch. But the Haskins era was a total joke. I don't know how anyone thought this guy had any sort of potential or noteworthiness overall as a player. To me, even though I wasn't a huge college football fan, that sort of jumped out to me as one of the talents that wouldn't translate. Whereas I look at a guy like Joe Burrow, and that was very obvious that he was going to do well, and it's just a damn shame what happened to his knee.
Hmm.
You never like to see quarterbacks go down with knee injuries. There's really no honor or like valor in a knee injury. It's like, oh, like I was throwing and like these linemen fell into my legs. Whereas like if you get lit up like that Drew Bledsoe hit that led to Tom Brady's dynasty, like that's like a clean football hit. Like you're moving around, you're making a play, you're able to defend yourself, and someone lights you up. So it's just really awful and abominable to see these severe knee injuries happen to quarterbacks. We mentioned Brady in '08 when the Jets were good. Of course, that's exactly what happened to him, and they actually made a rule, the Brady rule, that essentially prevented linemen from just diving at quarterbacks' knees, like Vontez Burfict tried to do to that Hollywood pretty boy out on the West Coast, Barkley.
Hmm.
But I digress. People are tired of hearing about the NFC East. If I can't stand to watch it, it's just pretty awful. So Christian takes me down, which was an absolutely huge game because that he secures the first seed. He's locked that one up. And due to AB's newbiness as well as self-loathing from losing to me, and AB giving Christian basically the depth he needed to not ever blow his lead. So shout out to AB. I'm 1-1 versus AB this year.
And he, and even if you would have started one of your wide receivers who had a better performance as in Tyler Boyd or Kiki QT, you still would have lost by a closer margin, but it might have been even more heartbreaking. So
Yeah.
it is frustrating, like you said, having the Waller performance of 200 yards and 2 touchdowns when especially Christian started a flex position that didn't even play, which is kind of unlike him. But I guess it was later into the week, so I guess most of his players had already played, so he was probably a little handcuffed by that.
It's interesting to me that if you look at my team, this is a team that you can very easily see how I went from being the juggernaut and the top tier guy, the number one ranked guy in the league for so long, to a solid team, but one that's probably going to miss the playoffs. Number one, Drew Brees goes down. This is a very consistent guy, and of course, the quarterback is sort of the backbone of your team, and I didn't have a backup at the time. Thankfully, I picked up Big Ben Raplesberger the moment he touched the waiver wire from No Fried, which, considering how good the Steelers have been this year, the emergence of Claypool, and the fact that they were nearly undefeated until that abominable choke last week, the Roethlisberger pickup by me, I think, was a decent little adjustment. Also, Nick Chubb coming back. Kareem Hunt has been significantly worse than he was before Nick Chubb got injured, because whenever Nick Chubb was healthy at the beginning of the year, him and Hunt were like a 60-40 in favor of Chubb, but Hunt got the goal line looks. And since Chubb has come back, Kareem Hunt, not only has his role been diminished, but even though he does get 10-plus touches usually, he looks way worse, way less effective. George Kittle destroyed his leg. That fucked me. That's a top-tier tight end. Consider how awful Zach Ertz has been. This is a guy people used to reach for in the third round, and he's not even rosterable this year. So that means players like Kittle are even more valuable because there's way less depth. Anyway, that pretty much sums it up. Oh, and Tyler Boyd's value went to nothing when Burrow blew his knee out. So the hammer blows hit me
Exactly.
back after back after back like Rob Stark. And I like my little Vikings pick up here. And my plan was to juggle the Vikings and Texans because of the way that their schedules worked, trying to play the hot hand against Chicago because Chicago looks pretty shitty and they sort of look lost, way less lost than Jacksonville. But to me, that team is always surrounding itself with these mid-tier, painfully average quarterbacks that really can't get it done. Action J. I mean, Kyle Orton was like their fucking savior. Kyle Orton was the shit on that team. That's how bad they were. And they're going with this Trubisky, and they've stuck with him, and then they went back to Foles. They're just a disaster. So we can move on. Nice win there from the Gouch. And, I'm just really happy for Christian Ben because this is a guy that made it to the Super Bowl last year and has clearly shown a lot of improvement. And I'm glad that AB's joining the league was the little bit of enzyme on the on the chrysalis of Christian. Of being Jackson's pupil to finally make him emerge into the beautiful, massive butterfly that he is. So we can move on to Weston, who essentially this year has done nothing but fuck me. This is a guy who looked really good in the middle when Julio Jones came back and was effective, but gets lucky and beats me, plays terrible versus Lily, shits the bed versus Christian. Obviously it's not personal and it's like total luck, and I'm being silly here, but Weston just is really shivving me. Historically, he has a phenomenal record against me, but we're 1-1 against each other this season, and the damage he's done has been against the other players. So Lily with a big win, and this is important because Lily moves to 8-5. I'll jump back to the divisions here. So Gouch is locked in. Let's just go ahead and address the divisions so we can move forward with the rest of the episode, because that's really why people are watching. So Gouch, lock number 1, clinch the division. Remember, 1 week left, folks. And that's at 10-3. Lily and I are tied. She owns the tiebreaker, and she's playing Cam. So she has to lose to Cam. I have to win for me to get through. Both of us winning won't do it. Me losing won't do it. Hilariously, AB. Oh my God, Ben, talk to me about the division of death here. We have 2 freaking teams at 5-8. This is just bonkers. Well, what do you think about this?
I mean, I don't know who. I mean, I guess if I had to choose one of these 2 divisions to be mine and the division of death to be compared to the NFC East, it would be the division of death. Considering AB has a losing record, he's in first, and then the 2 people below him, Jackson and Clatfor, both 5-8, both are still in position, vying tiebreakers to make a playoff spot, clinching the division. And then you think Spencer, who's had the worst year by far, 4-9, is only 2 games out, so he was still in it basically until the last few weeks. Just a clusterfuck of a division. It's quite wild, and it's cool to see Jackson reeling off 3 straight wins. He was 2-8, and now he's in a position to maybe make the playoffs.
You have to love Jackson's continued commitment. A few weeks ago I had him on the show. He's always a phenomenal guest. Love the way he sort of pushes the show in directions it wouldn't normally go. I think he's just a phenomenal thinker when it comes to sports.
He is.
And it just jumps out at you and hits you right in the mouth that Jackson was having the worst season out of anyone after talking the loudest. And he kept grinding. He kept being active on the waiver wire. He didn't cry baby. He didn't give up. And even though he was one of the guys who wanted a higher buy-in and didn't get it, it didn't discourage him. He stayed in there, and look where he is now. He's right there with AB. And I want to point out something very important to you, King of Funny. AB is 1-1 versus Jackson. And remember, if you're 1-1 versus your opponent, then it goes to total points scored. And AB is a less than 15 points difference from Jackson. So that's essentially a flip as far as the breaker goes. And Clap 4 has narrowly defeated Austin twice this season. So if Clap 4 wins and AB loses, then AB misses the playoffs. Although, greatly for AB, going into the last game of the season, sort of like a baseball pennant, you really want to control your own destiny, man. You do not want to be in a position like J-Rock over here, where you're fucking hoping someone loses. You like, you need 15 different things to break your way. This person needs to lose. Cameron needs to check his lineup, which is like the longest shot of all. Isn't it just insane how in the season where we're going into the final week and like 10 or 9 out of the 12 teams are live, which is just fucking jaw-dropping. Cameron has to be messaged like 5 or 6 times just to hit the optimize button so he cannot ruin the playoffs for someone. Like, this is the guy who was most stridently against raising the buy-in. Oh, the virus, what are we gonna do, the virus? Like, that makes you look bad. Like, just start warm bodies. I'm not expecting him to be Spencer with these advanced formulas or like a Michael Fabiano type. Oh, I'm like, have all these picks. These are my hot and colds. Like, I'm not expecting that from Cam. I don't want to be in a position where I have had one of the most frustrating, vexing seasons of my career, and basically everything has been against me luck-wise. I've just had phenomenal division opponents, incredibly talented players that have improved, like Christian, and then other very good players who have maintained their level. I mean, look at this. Weston's last at 7-6, and he's probably he might even win. Might go 8-6.
And look at how many points he scored compared to. I mean, he's outscored everyone else in the other 2 divisions.
Yep.
By a long shot.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
He's the second highest scoring team in the league, actually.
Yep. And if you look, yeah, the division ranks, of course, 1 through 4 in the cursed lands, and we can move on to the big oven because we've covered in the division of death. Spencer's eliminated. AB controls his own destiny. He's flipping versus Jackson, tiebreaker wise, and Clap 4 has him on the tiebreaker, but all AB has to do is win, so that's good for him. And then in the big oven, weirdly, No Fried has in the first spot, and you're right there with him at 7-6. What are your thoughts on this matchup, this dichotomy, because Aaron's out and Cam is out? So what do you think about this? Because I play No Fried. This is like a big reason why I had you on.
It's honestly it's not as bad as it looks for me, even though, like you said, you really do want to control your own destiny. But I do have the luck of No Fried playing a quality opponent, one of the best teams that has been all year with yours, despite the last 3 weeks. So in that sense, I'm very grateful for him to have to play a tough opponent. And me, even though he has been on a roll recently with the 3 straight wins, I play a team that has struggled overall this year with Jackson. But like I said, that can be a little bit misleading because
he's improved throughout the season significantly. It's
exactly.
Not even really the same team.
Exactly, and he has. I mean, obviously he's always going to give his all whenever it comes to managing, but especially now, whenever he's in so close of coming back from a 3-8 hole, and maybe making the playoffs. So it's going to be a tough matchup against Jackson for me. But I'm more positive this week than I was feeling last week against No Fried. Not guaranteeing anything, but I do think that I have a decent chance. But only if you win. Because I'm about 30 points down when it comes to points scored compared to No Fried.
And you're 1-1, so it would go down to the points.
Exactly. So unless if No Fried just screwed the pooch and I scored some outrageous amount of points to close that gap, I really need you to win tomorrow. So it's honestly from a spectator's point of view, what more could you ask for on the last regular season week of a fantasy football season?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
So much drama.
Ben,
so much drama.
It's going to be great. And you know how many goddamn episodes of TWIF? Remember, I've been doing this show for years and years, folks. Target audience of 12 fucking people. It's basically a show to fucking get people to set their lineups. So the cat is out of the bag, okay? But what's funny to me is I've done episodes of TWIF, like you go back, I have all the videos cataloged on my channel in playlists, except for the one episode Ben did, lol. And you remember the fact that some of these I would like, here we are, TWIF 2011 Week 5 preview. 3 of the teams have already given up. They're 0-4, like they fucked off, they don't care anymore. I just think it's great that the extreme interest in this season and the high level of parity has really kept people engaged, minus Cam. But as far as narrative-wise and interest-wise, I think this is great. And part of me also says, even though I'm like, remember how hard Christian kvetched whenever he realized he wasn't going to get like his buy-in back when he lost the Super Bowl from the wild card spot? Like, that is absolutely nothing compared to like what happened to me this year, like bad luck wise and like results wise. But it's just bizarre to consider that this division format has actually kept people more interested and like made it more interesting, as opposed to consider what if we had just done the proposed format of top 4 records make it in. The divisions exist, but they don't matter. Teams like AB, teams like although you and AB were both sort of above average for the majority of the year. I guess a better example would be Jackson, Clap 4, Cam, Aaron, these sort of more like mid-tier teams that maybe didn't start out as well. They would have had way less incentive to pay attention and be interested. What do you think about this issue?
Very true. No, I mean, you're 100% right. And whenever you asked me, me and Austin, if we should restructure the playoff format, I'm not going to say like vehement about it, but I was pretty strongly opinioned on the side that we shouldn't change it, because I like this amount of parity, and you don't see this kind of week 14 drama that we're seeing right now on normal seasons. Like, this is pretty rare. So, and like you said, it's kept a lot of us honest. I mean, teams that would have been usually out of it mid-season have had a chance to come back and make a playoff spot potentially. So I'm all for it. I mean, I love it. We can talk about the debate about changing the structure in the off season, but right now I'm glad that we kept it for this season, because it's one of the most interesting seasons, especially with all the COVID stuff and it made waiver wires that much more important. It's just been one hell of an interesting season, so I'm all for it.
I think you articulated your point very well, and considering I'm literally like roped up over a barrel right now for the final week, like the fact that I can actually point out and agree with you and be like, yes, there are benefits to this format, and I'm not just being biased, even though this was one of like the most unlucky runs if you consider the power of my team and the momentum I had and how good everyone else in my division was. It was the perfect shitstorm for me to miss the playoffs this year. And I think that this division format, although some people might think it's outdated, like a 1955 baseball with like a pennant run, I think that it keeps people interested, and it keeps rivalries building up, and it keeps that sort of energy going, because if you have to win a division, suddenly, as we've learned from the last 10 minutes of this video and looking up people's head-to-heads, suddenly beating your division rivals matters more. And how do you establish a rivalry within your division? You play these grudge matches that really fucking matter. If I play Cameron once a year, and I like pretty much always lose somehow. I'm like the only guy Cameron has a winning record against. And it's just like a funny thing, because it's like, oh yeah, Cameron's going to beat me. Like, this is the one time he's going to like look at the fucking free agent wire, because pretty sure like me and Cameron's matchup is his fucking Super Bowl. But it's just very interesting to consider that you have to play the people twice in your division, therefore, especially because it's at the beginning of the season when people really matter, or really care rather, and are really paying close attention. Oh, I got my team. How am I doing week 1, 2, and 3, And then at the end when people are making the stretch drive playoff runs, it's just phenomenal. Narrative-wise, I think I have my fucking like journalist blinders on at the moment. But like, this division format is more interesting to observe. and I think it keeps people interested as far as just the interest in the league overall. So we can move on from the format talk, but it was very, very important for us to address all the divisions before we went into the reviews and previews, just so people know what the deal is and know what the context is. So we can finish reviewing the last week's games and then jump right into the good stuff. So Lilly won. Weston, really the defining factor in his loss was Justin Hebert getting firing squatted in this abominable 45-0 shit stomp where the Chargers vomited all over themselves. This game really fucked me in the ass because not only was Hebert terrible, and Weston solo lost because of it to Lilly, who I needed him to beat, who's basically the biggest issue to me right now. Look, the Gauch is the powerhouse. Between him, between Jackson's fantasy knowledge and AB's stupidity and Christian's mouth, he's been Frankenstein together into this grotesque monster. And I'm in this position where I'm like, hey, Weston, can you help me kill the monster? And Weston smiles and shoots me in the head twice this week and last. Herbert, I know I call him Hebert, I think I can't say that joke, but Hebert just was awful, and the Chargers had one of these weird games where they did really bad and then they fell behind even more. It was just sort of bizarre. But that also meant that Keenan Allen was vastly ineffective, and that was just a double whammy for me. But good play from Lilly. This is someone who, despite not being very talkative, I think it's kind of weird for her in this obnoxious boys club for her to chip in, but I don't really know. I'm not a chick, so good win for her. Jackson completes his 3-win streak. Monster modes the commish after losing to him early on in the season. Some factors: Lamar popped off, Aaron Jones did very well. Unfortunately for Jackson, Gibson got banged up. This was a guy who Jackson had kind of picked up on the waiver wire and had been riding phenomenally. This was one of these guys that had an uptick in production right whenever
18.5, 16, and 31 before that injury.
Yeah.
In 3 weeks. So
yeah,
you're not wrong.
Exactly. But his uptick in production correlated with them being oh, Alex Smith is back, an actually talented quarterback. I think it's crazy what happens when you take an average. That's what Alex Smith is. If you fucking look in the dictionary and look up average, Alex Smith has literally been average his whole career. He's not bad. He's not really good either, He's been average.
He was a good game manager with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Got a lot of wins with them.
But see, he was average with the best offensive mind in football with a fuckload of weapons and a decent defense. And he did look about so overall as a football team, they were good. And the point I'm making is, and this sounds like I'm shitting on Alex Smith, but it's actually the opposite. I'm merely pointing out that, when I mean average, I literally mean average. I don't mean it as a slight. If you put an average quarterback in an offense, it's amazing how much better the offense looks. Consider how abominably awful and clueless they looked with Haskins. This was one of those offenses that really was just incapable of scoring in any way. And you put a guy who no one is really writing home about in Alex Smith for the last 10 years. Everyone knows what he is. This is a guy that really has turned Washington around. So send help. That's Jackson. He takes the dub. AB went down as he accurately predicted. Spencer gets a little bit of revenge for AB clowning him and his numbers. What are your thoughts on this game and Spencer's season overall? Of course, Spencer had his first losing season last year, and a lot of people really projected him to come back strong. He's the worst record in the league, and I think the least amount of points scored too. So go ahead and give me your thoughts.
Honestly, a lot of the same that has hampered Austin. I'm not going to say Kyler had a bad game, but 16 is kind of below his average, and James Robinson with his 16.8 has done what he's done all year for Austin as an undrafted rookie and a waiver wire pickup, and carried his team a lot. But you look at the rest of the team, Tyreek had a below average day for him. Juju has just been one of the biggest kryptonites for Austin, especially with the emergence of Claypool. And I feel like they have so many weapons. I mean, they have two guys named Washington that are both getting decent looks at the wide receiver position. So when Juju's not getting cucked by Claypool, it seems like it's someone else. And once again, had an abysmal performance with 2.8. And then his flex, I mean, not like it would have really mattered, but having James White only get one reception yard as a running back is just laughable. But then again, you look at his bench, and he didn't really have many other options.
Well, that's what happens when you have to just go to the waiver wire and be like, this is the only body that's warm. Like, get out there. And you really put yourself in a bad position whenever you trade away depth for people like Joe Mixon. It's not that Joe Mixon is like the biggest shitter in the league. It's that this happens. Like, he gets eight points until he gets hurt. Oh, of course. I predicted it fucking before the trade happened. I've been shitting on Joe Mixon for years.
You told me that whenever I traded him, it was a great trade just to get rid of him. I mean, so and David Johnson gave me some production, and even though he did get hurt a little bit too, so it wasn't a win for me exactly. But I mean, yeah, Mixon is kind of like the butt of all of our jokes, especially at the running back position, because he can never stay healthy, and when he does, he gets the bulk of the carries, but maybe with Joe Burrow now going forward, they're going to move away from him. But overall, I just think Austin's team is, like I said, the same things that have hampered him again, and a really good performance by Spencer. Montgomery getting 23, Devontae Adams killing it with 24, Michael Thomas coming back finally and doing good, getting 100 yards, and then James Taylor as his flex. I mean, a really solid performance by Spencer. So those two things combined makes sense why we see the outcome the way it happened.
I agree completely. And Spencer, I think, even though he's going to finish with a losing record, he got a little bit of revenge. Cameron beat Aaron. Thus concludes that preview. It's just worth noting that this DJ Moore jerk-off was on bye, and Cameron started him. He was on bye. Not like he
still scored 107.
Yeah, not like he got hurt an hour before And another, it wouldn't have been funny if Dak had stayed healthy and Cameron would have just gotten hard solo carried into the playoffs by Dak and then started a guy on bye in the playoffs. Like, how Cameron would that have been?
It would have been 100% true to his nature, but Tannehill is the 7th ranked, so it could have been worse.
That's like classic Cam, just in terms of Tannehill was killing it, Dak was killing it. Did he try to move either one of them? Fuck no. And it's like, well, he was right because one got hurt. It's like, no. It's like one got hurt, great, but then the rest of his team was shit. Like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. The fact that you have to PM, beg, and text someone hey dude, can you just start a warm body? I know you're really worried about the virus, but come on.
In week 13, whenever you're still in play for a playoff position too.
Exactly. I know you got out to an early lead and managed to choke it, just like you've done pretty much every season, but could you not fuck me in the ass? Could I at least lose with honor to your sister? Could you not put a fucking asterisk by this? Could I just go down as this was the season where the cursed lands were god tier, and one person had to get fucked, and it was Wiley. I'm fine with that. That just happens sometimes. But that's a completely different fucking beast than think about this. If Cam had started the inactive again and had barely lost to Lily and I had won, and Lily would have gotten to go into the playoffs, that would have been ridiculous. So I'm just glad. Also, I know I usually wait until the latest possible time to do the TWIF, but it's 11:30, and it's I had to badger him all day. I wanted to do the episode earlier, but it would have been a huge fucking fly in the ointment question mark in the air type episode. So I'm glad that we have some clarity on that. So we can preview the next week's matchups. We might as well start with you and Jackson, I feel like, because this is a matchup that has a ton of playoff implications and sort of a rivalry matchup. And I think it's interesting that you always play the same team on week 14, which is interesting because obviously it's such a big week. So You draw
Mm-hmm.
Jackson here, which is pretty historically difficult. You can go ahead and preview the matchup here. Tell me what you think.
I honestly think it's going to be really close. I think Josh Allen and Jackson are, I mean, some of the top quarterbacks that we've. I mean, even though Lamar is ranked 10, I mean, he can go off at any given week, especially his running capability. So, two good quarterbacks. Uh, his running backs is where I'm a little bit scared with for me because I'm comfortable with Chubb, but Aaron Jones and Carson and compared to whoever I'm going to start at, which I'm still juggling right now, who I'm thinking I'm going to start other than uh, Edmonds because I Johnson has COVID, so I can't start him. I probably won't start Lindsey. I'm thinking about maneuvering it around and maybe starting Frank Gore if he's healthy or Le'Veon, but I think Edmonds is the safer pick, honestly. But that being said, Jackson's running backs, plus if you add Giovanni Bernard as his flex, kind of scare me compared to mine. Uh, Wide receiver wise, I think I have this advantage. Robert Woods already played, had 3.1 points. Tim Patrick's a decent option, but in an offense like the Broncos, I don't really consider him like a premier choice to play, especially in Week 13. And then on my side, having Scary Terry, whose lack of touchdowns is annoying, but he's always, I mean, I think he's like the third most targeted receiver in the league. No matter who is on that quarterback carousel for the Redskins, he's always been getting targets.
Well, they got to score somehow. You know what I mean? Like when they get points, he's usually the guy that helps them do it the most.
True. And I liked my Debo Samuel pickup from a few weeks ago. Uh, I'm still debating whether to start him or Cole Beasley, who, if I would have started last week, I actually would have won, which is annoying. But and then Mike Evans, who he can get three targets all game, but they might all be in the red zone, which is amazing. So wide receiver wise, I think I have the edge, but like I said, I really think it's going to be a close one. So I don't even know how to predict this for me. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I love the Bengals pick against Dallas's abomination of a fucking offense. This is an offense racked with offensive line injuries. Zach Martin torn up all fucking year. Tyron Smith out since early. Of course, Dak is long gone. Hopefully that's a permanent statement. Not like he's dead, but out of Dallas, lol. Zeke Elliott quit. When he got that septum piercing, he might as well have gotten worthless tattooed across his fucking forehead. This is an offense with just a bunch of jokers. Michael Gallup has pan hands. Ben, you want to hear something that sounds like a joke that's not? You, me, Seagouch, and Michael Gallup doing wide receiver pass catching drills. Guess where Michael Gallup would rank? Fourth! Fourth! That is disgusting. He has the worst case of fucking pan hands I've ever seen. Cooper's talented. CeeDee Lamb's been good, but remember, folks, the cretin that defends Dak, that's been saying one more year for the last 3 years, and doesn't understand that offensive linemen don't play at a Pro Bowl level on low money contracts for 15 straight years. These are the people that have reined in this new era of Cowboys incompetence, and I really wonder how horrifically bad they'll be for the next couple years, because even if you were to say, well, Dak is great, and if they get him back, they looked, like the defense is still like a couple drafts away from even being okay. This is the worst Cowboys defense in history. Worst rush defense in the entire fucking NFL this season, and the only reason that the passing defense isn't last-rated is because they get run on so easily. This is a pass defense that can't tackle, that can't intercept, that can't make plays, and just look like it doesn't care. So Cowboys are dead in the water. I don't really want to hear any excuses about, well, the virus. McCarthy didn't get to eat McDonald's with the guys in training camp. Like, no, fuck that. Like, these guys don't give a shit. They don't play inspired. They're disgraceful. They're a disgrace to Dallas. They're a disgrace to Texas, and they're a disgrace to America's team. And it repulses me so much to watch these animals on a weekly basis.
One interesting thing before we move on from this matchup, or in your prediction, I just want to say it is interesting how this game won't be over until Monday night, where Lamar plays for Jackson and Nick Chubb plays for me, as it's a Cleveland versus Baltimore game. So some heavy, heavy implications going into that Monday night game. So
I love that. Jackson really likes to pay attention to the times as well, so I'm glad you pointed that out. I think one thing that jumps out for me, Benny Boy, is Nick Chubb starting against Baltimore, who's very stellar against the run. And furthermore, Cleveland's probably going to be playing from behind, so that's kind of shit for you.
true.
I don't really trust Debo Samuel. The fucking Chargers looked awful last week, although I don't think they're going to repeat that, but
Or the 49ers.
no, I was talking about Henry. The
Oh,
Chargers
I'm
looked
sorry.
terrible last week. I don't think they'll be as bad, but
Yeah.
I don't really feel like you're going to win. I feel like Jackson's probably going to win.
Oh, that's fair.
I feel like Aaron Jones is going to have a great day, and Carson's playing the awful Jets. They're going to get ahead early. He'll probably find the end zone. I think Chris Carson's due for a good game. He'll get 14 plus. Give me 14 plus from Aaron Jones too, and I think Lamar Jackson buries you in a pretty embarrassing loss for Cleveland. So this is going to be a
If,
rough one for you, buddy.
if those top three, though, I mean, if there's any missteps in those performances in those top three, the rest of his roster just got me thinking I might have a chance. But I agree with you; those top three are all looking primed for a pretty good week.
One thing that jumps out to me though is Gio Bernard is going to be running against no defense, and there's no Joe Mixon to get in his way. So I'd pencil Gio in for 10.
That's fair. Yeah, I didn't. I forgot that they're playing the jokes. So
All right, we can move on here. AB is playing Aaron, and this game is of course relevant because AB needs a victory, and this could be a nice little chance for Aaron to upset AB and really fuck him. But Aaron's starting
hmm
Teddy Bridgewater, who basically has been bad all season. Not like horrific from a fantasy perspective, but in terms of like a real life perspective, the Panthers definitely like punted the entire season away. And as a Panther fan, I don't really felt like there was ever any legitimate urgency or desire to win when they signed Bridgewater. It was just a stopgap move. It's some,
agreed.
it's something that you do. We got a first year coach. We don't want to like try to rush out like, oh, we didn't really have the pick for like a top tier quarterback in the draft, so we'll just give it to Bridgewater like he's not a joke. Well, they got to 8 losses pretty fucking fast. Let me just put it to you that way. So I really think that even though Bridgewater's not that good, if ever there was a time to start him, it's against Denver. Kyler Murray is playing the Giants. The Giants really, really need to win. They look red hot. I mean, as hot as the Giants can get. But Kyler Murray, I think, is due for a huge game. Robinson has been really the carry of AB's team, low-key all season.
hmm
And he's really going to need a big performance from him. Tyreek Hill could blow up versus Miami. That's one thing about AB's team that you can't really underestimate is that Tyreek Hill is just so explosive. He's one of like the 5 guys in the league that can have these insane 35 plus like pop off games and can solo carry you. Between that and Robinson, that's been a huge factor in AB's success this year. But
hmm
but you can see this is a team with a lot of holes. This is like a very flawed team. This team, like you sort of look at it, like if you were to just drop a random person in and be like, this guy's in position to win his division, he's in the lead, like look at his team, they would probably be like, did he have like a really bad injury or did he make like a stupid trade or something? Like there seems to be holes in it that there shouldn't be. And it's not particularly frightening as far as a playoff team, but considering Aaron's roster here, both of his running backs are solid, but Aaron's roster isn't really particularly scary either. Aaron was really high on CeeDee Lamb. Of course, the Cowboys have been dog shit since Stat got hurt. And,
Yep.
and he was just ridiculously high on Calvin Ridley, who's been decent since he traded for him, but nothing that's blowing you away or is wide receiver 1 worthy. So basically, there's just a giant fucking hole in the middle of Aaron's team, and it's very obvious. And I think that this Dolphins start versus Kansas City is asinine, and I'm going to give it to AB in a close one.
Yeah, I think AB is going to win too. Is Aaron just has one of those teams that looks really nice, like aesthetically, names wise. Like I mean, of course, Connor and Cook, but then Ty, who's literally he did not break double-digit fantasy points until week 12, even though he's always been a perennial good wide receiver.
Yep.
Calvin Rid- Calvin Ridley, you know my opinion on him, ranked 12. I mean, I like to see that.
But
Gronk
rank
and
one in your
maybe,
heart.
yeah, rank one in my heart, and it should be on depth chart. But I think Gronk somehow being the 12th ranked tight end, even though he's nowhere what he used to be. CeeDee Lamb is a nice name, and I liked CeeDee whenever he drafted him. But like you said, when Dak went out, that kind of just torpedoed his fantasy appeal. So yeah, a lot of holes, kind of on both teams. If you look at Devontae, or was it Devin Booker as Devontae Booker as Austin's running back. Um, and then having Antonio Brown, who's competing with so many different players for just a couple of catches, even though he has got a decent amount of them. And Juju being unreliable as hell. So not as many holes as Aaron's team, but a couple of them. But like you said, I think that he wins this pretty narrowly.
Couple things that jump out to me about Aaron's team, since probably not going to be talking about it after this week. Singletary's value significantly decreased because of the Diggs signing and the addition of Zach Moss. This was a guy who was pretty solid overall for me on my Super Bowl winning team last year as a flex, because he got a lot of red zone looks and he got a lot of passes in the flats because they didn't have a receiver other than fucking Cole Beasley, who's obviously not a number one guy and is not going to scare any safety in the entire NFL. So Singletary really hasn't been startable all year, despite the fact that, as I predicted, Buffalo has really come into their own and is going to win that division. So
Yeah.
that hits you right over the head, is like, because it's like, yeah, oh, you're right. This is a very aesthetically pleasing team. And another way I want to put that to people who might be sort of like vexed by the word aesthetics and such a quantitative thing, I want you to pretend that over here to the left of the players' names where my mouse is there are like the years. Like, what year is it? That fucking meme of that guy with Robin Williams with the beard.
Uh-huh.
Like, what year is it? Like, T.Y. Hilton. Oh, is it 2010? Or fucking like 2015? Like, no. Gronk! Like, is it 2016? 2014? Like,
Cam Newton, 2015.
exactly, exactly.
Devontae Parker. I mean,
Yeah, these are, and that's the just sort of backing up what you said, putting it in another way. You know,
yeah.
Spencer really hasn't been wanting to come. I've been inviting Spencer to come on several episodes because I think he makes good points and he's not afraid to push back. I think he's well spoken and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't really been as willing to come on as he has been in previous years, whether it be his record or he doesn't like being made fun of for his charts. Which, you know that wolf meme, Ben, of like the two wolves, and one is filled with 100 arrows and surviving, and one has been struck by a single arrow and is dead?
Yes.
Well, Spencer is the single arrow dead wolf, and I am the 100 arrow full wolf, and the caption reads, Wiley predicting his teams to be rank 1 since 2011. And then Spencer predicting his team to be number 1 for 2 years. And poor Spencer just can't take the clowning that I had to gargle for so many years. I don't know if it's the numbers that rub people the wrong way, because I feel like when people are like, oh, well, it's Wiley's preview, of course the idiot's going to have himself first. It's like a running joke. But when Spencer's like, yes, I am the best, and here's the formula why, I feel like that just rankles with people.
It does. And I don't think Spencer means it like in an arrogant way by any means, but it does kind of uh, rustle some people's jimmies whenever he has all these charts and stats saying how he's the best and how he's going to perform the best. And as we know, fantasy doesn't really live out their predictions half the time. So I feel bad for Spencer in a way, because he is one of the best owners in the league, and I think he'll be back next year. But this year it's been tough, and you got to give him flack whenever he's in the dirt, because it's not every year that he has a season like this. So we got to enjoy it as rivals when we can.
Well, I think banter is perfectly fine. I don't think anyone has like said anything over the line or been excessively mean. It's just like, oh, where are your charts now? LOL. It's sort of like, well, Spencer, you like to dish it out when you have the best record and the most points, so you got to be able to take it too whenever you have the worst record in the league. So
That's true.
I think AB will narrowly win, and we can move on to Weston versus Spence, the battle of the Aggies, which has had one player go from each side, clock in 20, and this is expected to be a barn burner, even though it has virtually no literally no playoff implications. So we can cover this in less than 30 seconds. Just tell me what you think.
Uh, I honestly think Spencer wins this. I mean, it's going to be close if he does. Either way, I think it'll be close. But I think David Montgomery, I think James Taylor, I think they actually perform better just based off the performances or their opponents. I don't know. There's not much to really be said. I like his wide receivers a lot more than Spencer too. If Derrick Henry has another week like last week, he'll definitely win. Spencer will. So I don't know. Just looking at it briefly, I do like Spencer in this.
I agree with you. I also edge Spence, although I think Henry has a really good chance to just fucking bury him against Jacksonville. Spencer's got his Thomas and Adams duo healthy that he kind of was counting on all year. And they're locked and loaded and ready to go. And I really think that Spencer will take this, and it doesn't really matter overall. Which weirdly, it's weird to say that like a Weston Spencer matchup in the final week doesn't matter, but there you
True.
go. So we can move on to C. Goucher and Clapfor. And this is, of course, a matchup that will have tremendous impact on the outcome of the season. And by that, I mean really because of Kevin's ability to come back on Austin. It's going to be hard for Kevin to win, though, against the Gouch. But tell me what you think. Can Kevin do it? Because I think he's really the biggest threat to Austin.
Oh, I want to say yes, I really do, because I think that Kevin's a pretty competent manager, as he's shown throughout our entire history of the league. But just looking at these two teams, I'm really liking for what like most of the season, I'm liking what Christian's doing, especially with Clyde's Hilaire back. Kenyon Drake, if he plays, I think that's a good matchup against the Giants. Aaron Rodgers is going to have knowing a Green Bay Detroit Lions game, it's going to be 40-40 at halftime with him and Stafford going back and forth. And plus with Cooper and Shark. Cooper not as much just because of the whole Dak thing, but they are playing Cincinnati, so that is a toss-up. But when I look at Clapfor's team, there's just not much that does it for me. I mean, Duke Johnson starting, Wayne Gallman for the Giants. I love Tyler Lockett and Chris Godwin. I think those are good wide receivers, but nothing that'll blow Cooper and Shark out of the water. And Ebron too, nothing that I mean, especially after Waller's performance last week, which obviously it's not going to be as high as that, but I don't think Ebron is going to outperform Waller.
Well, Waller's been top 5 all year, and teams that are exceptionally run heavy, I've noticed, usually employ the tight end in the passing game more. Because obviously they fucking run out there with the jumbo sets, get that tight end out there for the extra blocking. And man, does that really apply to this Vegas team. Fucking Gruden, man. He's straight out of 1992, the way he calls plays, but it's somewhat effective.
And I really do like, because I mean, I'm starting the Bengals defense against an
Dallas.
NFC Dallas. Yeah, if you look, the Cardinals playing the Giants for Christian, and Saints playing the Eagles. So I wonder if someone has the defense playing against the Redskins, but it's just funny how anyone that's playing an NFC East opponent is just plugging in that defense when they can. But especially whenever Christian's had a kicker like Young Wei Koo that has popped off for some ungodly amounts at times, like 21 2 weeks ago, 18, 15. I mean, Young Wei Koo could basically outscore the entire bottom 4 people on Clapfor's team. So, if that's a possibility. So, looking at it, I really do have to give the edge to Christian, even though it could be a lot closer due to Lockett and Godwin than I might think, but I still give the edge to Christian.
I agree, and I think that the fact that Clapfor has to play Gouch in the final week kind of sucks is good for Austin. It's like, let's just compare 2 very basic scenarios. we have me needing to win and have Cameron to win against Lily versus all AB has to do is win. But even if he doesn't, Kevin has to play the best guy in the league.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say that we both think that Austin has a pretty high probability of clinching his division tomorrow.
Yeah, agreed. I think anytime you control your own destiny, by a whole game, it's not like they're tied is the point I'm making. So
And even then, even if he doesn't control it, there's still a chance he makes it. So
exactly.
good for Austin looking in tomorrow.
So go ahead and preview this matchup. Thankfully, Cam put in D Swift, who's going to be playing against Green Bay. Hilariously, he's lifted as questionable. So, in before he doesn't fucking play. What do you think?
Man, Cameron's team, as much as I like to give him crap and about his management, I do like Cameron's team. I think he's had some unlucky things that have happened to him, but with Cameron's bad karma when it comes to fantasy management, I don't feel bad for him whatsoever. But it is interesting that he is playing his sibling, who is also into a playoff spot possibly. So kind of interesting to think that Cameron could spoil things for his sister here. But looking at the matchup itself, Russell Wilson against the Jets, that could be dirty amount of points for Lily. But Tannehill's playing Jacksonville, and the same way that I think Derrick Henry might have a good game, I think Tannehill could as well against that terrible secondary for Jacksonville. Running backs wise, I like Melvin Gordon, even though he's not done super well this year, but he's done consistent numbers. Kamara can blow a game wide open. And then you look at Lily's with Gurley and Hines. Doesn't really have the same oomph to me as Cameron's running backs have. But you look at the wide receivers, Marvin Jones, A.J. Brown. Not bad options for Cameron. I like his wide receivers as well. Kind of another team that's aesthetically pleasing to the eye if you just look at the names. Kind of like Aaron hasn't performed as well. Lily has Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson, who I like both of very well. Let me look at Justin Jefferson. Yeah, because he's ranked 7th. He's had a really good year. And then we know all how Diggs is the number 1 target for Josh Allen. I'll give the wide receiver edge here to Lily. But I don't know. At first I was leaning towards Cameron, but I think the consistency of Lily's team, also with the fact, I guess it's only tight ends, but Higbee has only scored 3.4 in his game already. I think the consistency all around for Lily is looking a lot more likely for a win than Cameron, to be quite honest.
Yep, I completely concur rather. Occur. My fucking brain is breaking at the side of this, dude. It's so sickening. Oh my god. Basically, I'm looking at Cameron's team, and I'm basically, and hilariously, I'm hoping for the same fucking thing that Cameron's been hoping for all season, for his quarterback to get 40. And that was the entire fucking win condition he was running with at the first half of the season when he was doing well, and here we are. Now, thank God Melvin Gordon and Chimera are back, and they're, I think, poised to do well considering they're healthy and whatnot, but basically after the top 3, Cameron's team just goes to complete shit. That's just really, really fucking bad. Oh, and he needs to start Janu Smith. This was a top 5 guy before he got hurt. He's still ranked 10, and this fucking Tyler Higbee guy has been utter garbage. Now, obviously, he already locked Higbee in, but this is something that every single person who has come on Twiff has pointed out. This Janu Smith is really good, and Tyler Higbee's dog shit and has one fluky week inflating his stats, and Cameron has just had fucking Higbee and doing nothing week after week. That's the sort of Cam lapse stuff that happens every year. That's
Yeah.
That's how he consistently can start good and always never have a winning record.
Higbee ranked 19th and Smith ranked 10th. So even if he was just to look at numbers alone, if he even put that much effort in, not even knowing who these players are, and he's just putting a warm body in, even if he was just to look at the actual numbers, he should know that Smith is the way more viable option, but here we are. I mean, in a week where it really matters to you that he wins, and you have to badger him to put someone in who's questionable at flex. It's just it's got to be frustrating for you. But I do think if Swift can put out a decent amount of points if he plays, I think that he has a chance. Like I'm not sold on Lily winning this, but he has a chance with especially with Kamara, and if Tannehill goes off and Kamara can have one of his big games like he usually does against a Philly defense, then there's a chance. I'm not saying a large one, but there's a chance that Cameron could pull it off.
Well, let's hope he does, because if we move on to my final matchup, by the way, Lily's going to win by 10. If we move on to my matchup, I'm probably also going to narrowly lose, so, like, I don't know. I don't want to get my hopes up, because until fucking an hour ago, it was like, oh, he's just going to auto-lose. He's going to have a guy who was on bye last week and has had the virus since fucking Monday starting. But whatever. At least he has a questionable guy in now instead of an out guy out. But whatever. Ben Roethlisberger is playing Buffalo. That actually be a really good game considering how good both of those teams are, sort of battling for home field.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Allen are going to have a duel, I think. I didn't check the weather report, but assuming it's not like a snowy disaster, that should be a pretty high-scoring game. What do you think about this matchup overall?
Well, as we've mentioned earlier, I mean, a matchup that's important to you and me extremely. Uh, I'm kind of scared because No Fried is on a 3-game winning streak. You're on a 3-game losing streak. Not saying that's the deciding factor, obviously, but it just shows you where y'all's teams are at the current level of the season. And I mean, you see Patty Mahomes. Uh, has Eckler? I don't know. With the Chargers running back situation, I'm always like, who's playing? But yeah,
Well, Justin
yeah,
Jackson's hurt, so it should be him. At least
and against
somewhat.
the Falcons, a Falcons defense that isn't terrible, but yeah, that doesn't give me much confidence. Like you said, Gaskin has COVID, so he won't be playing, and his backups don't really inspire anything in me compared to uh, Ronald Jones and Zeke. Even though Zeke has had, like you said, a terrible season, just been worthless all year. Um, in a season where they needed him to step up, like and really just take over like he has in the past. But Ronald Jones, I like. So I like your running backs more than No Frieds. The wide receivers, though, with Keenan Allen and Hopkins, you already mentioned earlier how Keenan Allen's production dropped off last week to their bad performance. Maybe they can have a better week this week against the Falcons. Hopkins, who's questionable, I hope he can play for you because playing a Giants porous secondary. But looking at Thielen and Metcalf, that's a really good 1-2 combo. Um, and then Jaceki, too, is a good tight end. And then I like the Tyler Boyd play by you at your flex. And he's got, who is it, Corey Davis, who well, he's been doing a lot better recently compared to how he started off the season, but he still gets looks taken away by A.J. Brown. This is another close matchup because I think your running backs are better, but I think his wide receivers might be a little bit better. Even including the flex wide receivers that y'all both have playing. I do like your Texans play against the Bears and small PP Trubisky and the Steelers. I don't like the Steelers play considering how we just talked about. Unless if it is really bad conditions there in Buffalo, that it could be a shootout. So I think your defense wins there. But like I said, a really, really close matchup for me because running backs overweigh the wide receivers, or your running backs overweigh his running backs, and his wide receivers overweigh your wide receivers for me. But that being said, your wide receivers do have the possibility of breaking off for good games. And then looking at the running backs for him, I don't see them having massive games. I don't know. It's iffy all around. This is a really close one for me, but
Exciting one too. Lots of implications with this one for both me and you.
it really is. And unless if he can pull off some magic with his three running backs on his bench, or if he picks someone else up,
There's no one
I think
better on available. Just assume he's going to start one of those guys.
exactly. And Aaron just picked up DeAndre Washington, who's starting for the Dolphins tomorrow, Texas Tech grad. So I mean, that's how thin the options are at that position. But I that alone kind of gives me is making me think that you have a slight edge, just because of that one running back position. Because I think it's going to be really close across the board, but I think that could be a deciding factor, just regardless of who he plays at that running back too.
I'm going to start Tyler Boyd regardless at flex, but I want to get your thoughts on if I should consider Hunt or Landry or QT.
Uh, La- Landry's a decent option, uh, but especially after his past 2 weeks. But as we know, that's just lining him up for a bust week. Um, and as much as I love my Texas Tech boy QT, and with having Will Fuller out, I wouldn't put much faith into him,
Yeah, he's
especially based off the
notoriously hit or
consistency.
miss.
Yeah, I mean he's more of a slot receiver than anything. I mean he's one of the shortest guys in the league. And Kareem Hunt, another good option, but like you said, Chubb is really taken away from him, and they're playing a Ravens defense that is pretty stout.
Yep.
So, and like you mentioned before as well, the Tyler Boyd matchup against Dallas, which is basically against no defense, is a lot more appealing and appetizing to me as a fantasy owner than any of those three guys that we mentioned. So, I think it's a smart play for the play Boyd, which potentially could outplay Corey Davis in that a cross flex position that No Fried has.
Excellent point, Spinny Boy. Let me go ahead and make a few of my own, and we can close the show by doing like a playoff prediction. So, the few things that jump out at me: Hopkins is fucking put up or shut up time, dog shit defense. He's got a little insignificant injury, but he's almost certainly going to play. Logan Thomas is a guy I've been right about, and if he had been shit after Kettle went down, like, although I have kind of been fucked, like I'd be really fucked this week. Boyd was a guy I traded for Darrell Henderson with Weston, and let's see how many points Boyd has this year. I, you know what's funny to me is like when you click on the desktop app, the motherfucking stats, it doesn't even have targets listed. It has rushing and receiving yards and fumbles and points, but on the fucking mobile app it has targets. It's just so
That's what I was gonna say.
stupid.
On the mobile, it does.
It's
So
just,
that's
it's
kind of
pathetic. It tells you who the fucking target audience is. But,
true.
yep, obviously this is a must-win game for me. The win conditions here are for Zeke Elliott and Ronald Jones to get 8 plus, hopefully more. But like, if this is a team, if you look at it, basically where there's just been too many frauds and too many bed shitters on my roster to really like bring it home. Like between the injuries, like really cutting me down, that really opened up weaknesses that we brought up earlier. The worthlessness of Randy Bullock was the number one ranked kicker. The Bengals kicker that was an Aggie like 5 weeks ago was ranked number one. Then they had a
Oh
bye.
wow.
They had a bye week, and then like a little bit later, Burrow blew his knee out. So there goes Tyler Boyd's value, who was like a really solid flex, was ranked like around top 15 all year.
Hmm.
And then Bullock's worthless too. He's more worthless than Boyd because Boyd is still their only option. So presumably he's still going to get his looks, even if it's from a shit quarterback on a way worse offense. A kicker is sort of like an extension of the offense itself. Therefore, his value zeroed out. So, I mean, it just really got ass fucked this year. But I think that I'm honestly going to give myself the edge. I think I'll barely win, and I think Lily will win. So we can talk about the playoff preview. It'll be obviously wild card will play C Gouch, so it'll be Lily and Gouch, and then whoever you think will win. So let's go ahead and hear or it doesn't necessarily have to be Lily and Gouch. It could be Lily and me. But let's hear who you think is going to make the playoffs and who you're gonna pick to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, I don't want you to like shadow box the matchup all the way through a week in the future. I just want to get a quick little preview before we head out.
Quick question before I do. What was your record against Lily this year?
She beat me twice. She has tiebreaker.
Twice?
Yeah.
Tiebreaker, okay. Well, in that case, I really do think it's going to be, wild card's going to be Lily. Because as much as I want Cameron to beat her, I don't have much faith in that whatsoever. And even though I do have faith in you that you can beat No Fried tomorrow, that alone just kind of sours my mood on it. But I think it'll be Christian and Lily from your division. I think AB, like we said earlier, that we think that even if he doesn't win, which we think he will, there's a chance that he still makes the playoffs as the division leader at 6-8 or 7-7. And as much as I hate to admit it, I think even if you do win against No Fried, I think No Fried does take the division and take that third division spot. So those are my four that I think make it in.
What a brutal, brutal week this could be. It could be fucking phenomenal. It's just going to be so exciting. So, Benny boy, it was great to do another show with you. And next week, I guess I'll be here to pick up the fucking pieces of my season. So, sub for more Like the Vid.